I was in another place, I guess a year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago. I don't remember. And we had another orthopod, and he would just go and go and go and go. And they had the one tray, but we bought an Easy Tracks. And Easy Tracks was another thing that we were able to have Kyle come in, and he did all the trays and he formulated it to the doctor's liking. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience for both the staff, the doctor, and actually for me as a consultant, because we were making things happen. We were fixing the issues. We aren't band-aiding it. That's not what we're doing. We're fixing the issues.
Rising above the buzz of ultrasonic cleaners and the clanking of stainless steel are the ideas and voices that are changing an industry. You're listening to the Beyond Clean podcast, the central nexus for the people, processes, and products that are improving our sterile processing world. Each week, we speak with frontline technicians, CEOs, engineers, and entrepreneurs with a common goal to help you fight dirty. Every instrument, every time. Whether you are tuning in for education or inspiration, we're glad you did. Now turn on those washers and turn up the volume. It's time to go beyond clean.
On this vendor spotlight on Beyond Clean, we will speak with Kristina Parolo from Ketchum Consulting. She's out there supporting lots of different facilities now, but 14 years ago, she had her first experience with the one tray and has since been able to duplicate that success in helping hospitals and sterile processing departments meet operational challenges across the country. Her story is a fun one, so stick around. We're going to be right back with Kristina after a short break.
From the studios at Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Beyond Clean, the global voice of sterile processing.
Joining me now is Kristina Parolo from Ketchum Consulting, and we're going to be talking about repeated success with different facilities who have had different challenges, and it's all related to your experience with the one tray. And so, Kristina, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited for this conversation because I know you're a lot of fun.
That's what I heard. Not sure how true it is. We'll find out.
Well, Kristina, why don't you give everybody a little bit of background on yourself? Like, you're obviously in a consulting role now, but
I am.
You've taken a different pathway into healthcare, like everybody does. They all have their own story. So what's a little bit of yours?
So my story is I started in sterile processing in the 90s. Shows my age a little bit, right? And I liked it. It was something that I was only doing per diem after I had my second child, and I ended up really liking it. So I became full-time. I got certified. I became a lead technician. I became an educator. I wanted more. I became a production manager, an executive director. And then I just decided, I need to do something different and more. So I got into consulting. So that's where I am today. So now I do Ketchum Consulting, and I'm a 1099. I do independent contracting, and I go into different facilities and we fix some of the issues and some of the challenges.
I love your thirst for the industry and your desire to just keep growing. It's like, I did that, so now I got to do. But at this point, the sky's the limit, right? When you start going around and helping different facilities, I mean, even if the challenge is similar, the people are different. So You must love the fact that every engagement you go out on is something different every time.
So it's funny because it's different, but it's not. It's just different flies, right? It's the same thing, but it's different flies, but it's the same challenges. You go into these different facilities. And that's also why I got into consulting, because I felt powerless, that there was nothing that I can do as a regular associate. So what can I do to really get my feet wet and boots on the ground and make some of these changes? So that's really why I wanted to get into consulting. But to your point, they're different people, but a lot of the times it's really the same issues.
Well, I mean, that's a great segue into what some of those common issues are, because I'm super, super curious, like what the themes that continue to play out for you in your experience. A lot of people that are listening to the podcast might have only worked at the facility they're at today, or maybe they're only at their third facility. But when you're in consulting, you're in that many facilities a year, it seems like, if not more. Mm-hmm. And so you really get a broad set of data to say, here's the common things I see all the time.
Right. So you're right. There are some people that have been only in one facility that I'm working in now with process improvement and removing waste and interim leadership and setting some really good operational workflows. Some of the staff, this is the only sterile processing, that they have ever worked in. So they only know one way. So what's challenging for me, but I love it, is to say, hey, there's more than one way to count to 10. And I know this is the only place you've ever worked, but let me share some experiences with you. And here's why. So sharing the here's why is really important, especially with people who don't have the experience.
That's so important. The why. Because if you're going to get buy-in, and I can really appreciate the situation. You're coming in from the outside, you're not
fresh
on
eyes.
The team, so to speak. Right. And so
fresh eyes.
There's a good part of that. But if you want them to really take, some of your recommendations seriously and implement them, you have to kind of, get them engaged. And to get people engaged, they have to know why they should make a change or why they would want to make a change.
That's
Great
exactly
strategy.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I always tell all of my clients and all of the staff, especially the newer ones, you're the patient's voice when they don't have a voice. When that patient is under anesthesia, here's why we do what we do. And let me show you some things. And I'll share PowerPoints and past experiences and past projects. And a lot of the times, their face is just, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. So it's great to be able to go in and fix some of the issues and to fix some of the challenges.
And you wore a lot of different hats in sterile processing. So you are an educator, right? You did that role.
That's right.
And so the skills that you had to develop depending on what you were doing, depending on where you're at, in your career, really, I think, helped you wear these multiple different hats as a consultant and kind of have a very broad skill set to help them. So just diving a little bit more into the common challenges, like I feel like one thing I see all the time is just not having enough instrumentation and not necessarily even knowing how they're going to deal with that, right? Because so many people in the department don't necessarily have control over the budget. So when they don't have enough instrumentation, they may feel like, I feel like we need, more sets or we need more trays, but then they're going into a budget cycle. Have you seen that, or are there other things that you've noticed?
So I've seen that. I've seen instrumentation not having enough inventory, crazy expectations, turning things over, the C-suite not understanding, or the C-suite only keeping their finger on the pulse when things go wrong. And so here's what I say about not having enough inventory. You need to always have enough inventory, and you need to budget for it. So the operating room is 60% of the revenue for the facility, right? So, hey, I love your brand new coffee shop and your lobby looks great, but let's do more with less. And that's not acceptable to me because, again, you have to be the patient's voice when they don't have one. So what does that look like? Well, let's order what we need. We should never be turning things around to keep up. We should be ahead. We should not be playing keep up. So those are a lot of the challenges. So it's not just the inventory. It's the buy-in from the C-suite. It's the perioperative team rounding and sterile processing. It's building those relationships. It's bridging those gaps. Those are really important. It's more than just inventory.
Yeah. And I also think sometimes, and this probably fits really well, is like you get competing understandings of what surveyors are looking for. Or what like you said, the why and here's why. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of times I feel like it's almost like that game of telephone where people get like a concept of one piece of what the surveyors are looking for. Sometimes the surveyors, we've seen this in the past, are not necessarily consistent either. Right. And sometimes in the past, I've seen surveyors that have needed to kind of be educated, and, a department that's really strong is able to do some of that work. But at the end of the day, everybody else that's in the department, I feel like a lot of times it's that game of telephone. And so we misconstrue some of the areas of focus for surveys. Do you do survey readiness kind of like audits? Are you helping people understand the why behind that?
So I do surveys, whether it's from referral or whether I'm doing assessments. And so just to talk about surveyors, not all, but many of the surveyors are not educated correctly on what SPD actually does. So anybody can read a little portion of an AMI standard or read a little portion. It doesn't mean that you understand the process. I can read something. It doesn't mean that I can do it. I can read how to fly a plane. I'm not going to fly a plane because I've never done it. So some of the challenges with the surveyors, and not all of them, just in my experience, for example, if I can share. So I was at a facility and one surveyor came in and he was a pharmacist. I'm not going to say the names. And they had a new person who was part of the infection control, and they went to an offsite and they had instruments that were dry, clean, and ready for transport. So she called the pharmacy person and, the pharmacy guy and said, hey, these instruments aren't wet. Well, that's a conditional. Well, why is it a conditional? Because the instruments aren't wet. Well, that's because they were hand washed. They're clean. They're hand washed because our process is that we hand wash everything. We remove all the gross soil. We dry them. We package them. They get ready to get transported, and then they go to decontamination and go through the full decontamination process. Our process is that we don't transport anything soiled. No. And I said to him, with all due respect, sir, I said, there's a lot of places that do not have washers. They are actually hand washing, and it's acceptable to do so if you're doing it the right way. He didn't want to hear what I had to say. So he called somebody from his survey and they said, oh, that's a conditional. And I said, it's not a conditional. And then I said to him, listen, let me ask you this. When you're home and you wash your dishes, do you keep them wet in your cabinet until they're ready to use? Well, that's different. No, it's not different. It's not different because these instruments are clean, no different than the dishes that you use. So if you hand wash your dish, is that not acceptable because it didn't go through your dishwasher or it's not remaining wet? Is your silverware wet in your drawer? And I know it's a silly analogy. So long story short, I was called to the CNO's office and I was told, Kristina, stand down. You're going to get us a conditional. And I said, I'm not going to stand down because if we don't stand up, and again, if we don't do what's right, and if we're told to stand down and we're not sticking up for what's right, then how are we ever going to move forward, especially with educating the surveyors? So it's important, I think, to educate the surveyors and make sure that they're reading more than a little portion of what to do. So those are some of the challenges that I have. And not all surveyors are like that, but this particular one. So what the hospital did, instead of respectfully challenging the surveyor, they changed their entire process to now we don't pre-clean the instruments. We will just transport them soiled but sprayed. So it was really crazy. So for me, yes, I do surveys, but some of the surveyors, I don't get it. I don't understand. I've been doing this a really long time. It just doesn't make sense to me.
There's a critical thinking piece that was missing in that conversation for sure. Okay, I want to keep having you tell stories because you are a great storyteller, and I knew this was going to be a lot of fun. I've already laughed at least twice, and so this is great. I want to talk about your experience using OneTray because I think you came into contact with the company, 14 years ago?
2011, I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about that and what were your initial impressions?
So we've all been beaten with the Amy Bible, right? No, it can't be wet. It can't be wet. It can't be wet, which is silly. And I'm going to get into that of why it's silly in just a minute. But so I had two of the vendors. They were working with OneTray and a couple of other distributors at the time. And I'm very good friends with both of them still to this day. They came in and they said, hey, Kristina, let's chirp in your ear for a second. What do you want? Hey, there's this new product. It's called the OneTray. Although it's not new, it's been out since 2006. At least that's when the 510K came out. And they said it's called OneTray and there's no dry time. And immediately I said, what do you mean there's no dry time? That's crazy. Kick rocks. Get out of my office. No, Kristina, just listen. So the first thing for that is what did I do? I reacted, right? Because that's human nature. I reacted. I didn't like what you were telling me. It's not what I know. This is crazy. The Amy standards say this, or Isham says this, or so-and-so says this. So when I got over my little temper tantrum, I said, okay, fine. Tell me more. Because I'm very data driven. I'm very scientific, evidence-based data. Remove the feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. Tell me what it is. I don't care how you feel. It doesn't matter. Okay. Talk to me about facts. Show me the tests. Show me this test. Tell me about this. Well, Kristina, dry time doesn't make things sterile. And I understand that, right? Sterility is sterility. Dry time has nothing to do with sterility. So I said, okay, fine. Let's trial it. But before we trial it, let's educate the operating room because now you have to have the buy-in. You just can't have a new product and say, here it is. And then the staff in the OR are going to go, it's wet, which brings me back to my next point, which is kind of contradictory. When you used to flash things, was it wet? It was wet, right? It was wet. So that was okay. But now we have a fully sterilized tray that went through all the parameters. It has a hydrophobic filter. It's got condensation. It's got a little bit of condensation, but it's sterile. Think of opening up a bottle of sterile water and pouring it on top of your instruments. So it's funny because you have people screaming, it's wet, but you're okay to use something flash. So that doesn't make sense to me, right? So we have this great product and we started using it. We started trialing it. The doctors loved it. We had one orthopod, knees and hips, 6 a day, 7 a day, something that should take an hour and a half. He was done in 45 minutes. I don't know how he did it. So we were able to keep up because of the shortage of the inventory until we were able to budget for more inventory. And it's really important, again, for the C-suite to keep the finger on the pulse. What is it that you need? Well, I need these trays. So I went from 10 one trays to having 361 trays. And that's how much I believe in the product. I love it. It's amazing. And when I go into other facilities, I don't force it down their throat, but I say, hey, I noticed that you have some of these challenges. Have you thought about this?
I love what you said about the inventory and keeping your pulse on it, specifically in the example of the case went from an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes down to 45 minutes, because as soon as they start doing cases in 45 minutes, what's the next question? How many more cases can we
How many
schedule?
more cases can I do? And what can I do? And so again,
you're like always chasing it.
Yeah, well, we want to keep up with the inventory, but I shouldn't have to chase the day. I shouldn't have to chase the day, especially when the physicians are done earlier. Yeah, I could say, well, we're on schedule in sterile processing and you're just Superman, you're quick. But again, if we have enough inventory, we should always have enough inventory. So to not have that inventory and expect the staff to do cartwheels and decontamination and get everything done, that's really, that's just not an acceptable answer to turn this over. Let's get the inventory. And what can we do in the meantime when we're having these challenges? So I relied heavily on one tray. And to go back to the surveyors, it's important that the surveyors are educated on the one tray. What they need to understand, it is a fully sterilized tray and it can be stored for later as long as you follow your IFU, right? So if your hospital policy says it's event related, then you follow your event related policy. So I know one tray has a 48-hour policy, a shelf life or storage. And I always tell everybody, okay, hour 49, it doesn't mean that it's not sterile. So it's really important to follow the event related or whatever policy that you have in your hospital. Now, I will warn people, and I'm wearing my surveyor hat. If you say that you're event related and you're using expiratory, then you're in contradiction of your own policy and you will get a conditional for that. So it's really important that you're following your hospital policy. You have to be consistent. You can't say I'm doing this and then you're doing that. Now you can have a different policy for the one tray and that's okay.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
How many trays did you end up buying?
360.
Wow.
360.
So I guess the surgeons were on board.
They loved it. They loved it. Because think about this. Who wants to delay a case? Who wants to delay anything? Yep. By lack of inventory. And then you have to delay the case. So I say, you know what? Buy a one tray, because let's talk about the cost of a delay. On average, what is an OR minute? $62. Let's just say on average.
Underrated, right? But yeah.
Right. So anywhere from maybe 133 to 62. Let's just use 62 as the average number. So you delay something for an hour or 2 hours for the cost of a case of filters is than an actual OR delay. So let's keep it. Let's keep it moving. Let's just keep it moving. There's nothing wrong with the one tray, and everybody can have their own opinion about it, and that's fine. I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm here to speak about my experiences with the one tray. Never had an issue with it. I loved it. So I went from, hey, go kick rocks to give me 360.
Well, you mentioned the surgeons being a big factor in that because, they were happy with it. What were some of the benefits, to those orthopods?
Well, it's not just the orthopods, but how about the patients? Now their case isn't delayed. They're hungry, right? Hey, maybe they took off of work. Maybe they don't have health insurance. Maybe their family's coming in from different states and they're all sitting in the waiting room. And then, we have to delay you by 3 hours or 4 hours or maybe even cancel a case. So you have surgeon satisfaction. You have patient satisfaction. You have staff satisfaction. Hey, listen, the ROI is incredible. We're saving on wraps. We're saving on holes in trays. So there's a whole bunch of advantages of using the one tray, and really important is surgeon satisfaction. Because what's the first thing the surgeon does when they're mad? I'm going to go to the C-suite, right? So now they're going to the C-suite with a different message. Hey, things have been great. I've been able to add on cases. I've been able to bring more cases into the hospital. The hospital's making money. The patients are happy because they're not being delayed. They get to go home. They get to have their meal. So there's a lot of advantages. I have not experienced anything negative about the one tray since I personally have used it.
Well, and now you say you personally using it, but as a consultant, I'm assuming that some of those challenges, like we talked about with inventory, but several others that, you're running into that. And I'm just wondering, like you mentioned, you're not here to, change anybody's mind, but I'm assuming you're having conversations about the one tray since it did work for you. How do those conversations go?
I reach out to one tray first and foremost and say, hey, whether it's Mike or whether it's Kyle or Alex or Jeremy or whoever, and I say, hey, I'm at this facility. Here's some of the challenges. What can we do? I'd love to partner with one tray. Can I bring you on site? Can we have a conversation? And then I have that conversation with the perioperative director and I say, hey, have you heard of one tray? One place where I'm currently working, the periop director was like, I've used it in the past. I love it. It's great. And there's so many great advantages now that we're getting bigger and we're expanding. And, yes, we need to purchase the inventory, right? So let's budget for it. And then I have one tray come on site and we share the facts. Here's the facts. We don't sugarcoat. Here's what it is. Here's what it's not. And those conversations go really well. But I never push it on anybody. I say, I hear your challenges and it's completely up to you, but let me share why. Completely up to you. Well, I'm not there to force it.
And you remember your initial response too, right? So I just wonder, do you run into kick rocks when you're out there kind of helping them look at options to solve the problems that they're having?
And here's what I say. Before you say anything, let me finish. I know what you're going to say. And then I explain it and I tell them the real version because I didn't really say kick rocks, but we're not going to say what I said, right? So I said,
we'll go with kick rocks.
Kick rocks. Yeah. Let me explain to you the why. Here's the why. Here's the science. Here's the data. I know that in your minds, because it was so hard for me to grasp that it was wet. That was my biggest challenge. It's wet. No way. It's wet. And then I had to find out and learn all about the hydrophobic filters. It's a torturous pathway. And, there's no bacteria getting in and the water inside is sterile. So that for me, was the biggest challenge. And I think that's also the biggest challenge for a lot of clients that I talk to is the same thing. Well, I don't know. And this and that, I was in another place, I guess a year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years ago. I don't remember. And we had another orthopod and he would just go and go and go and go. And they had the one tray, but we bought in Easy Tracks. And Easy Tracks was another thing that we were able to have Kyle come in and he did all the trays and he formulated it to the doctor's liking. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience for both the staff, the doctor, and actually for me as a consultant because we were making things happen. We were fixing the issues. We aren't band-aiding it. That's not what we're doing. We're fixing the issues.
Yeah. I think it's important what you said about Easy Tracks too, because you're also just reducing the size of the inventory has to be reprocessed, right? So there's multiple different sort of efficiencies that can be, obtained that way.
Yeah.
I love that you go through those conversations that way. And I'm assuming you're kind of presenting the same, this is what happened to me. We went down to 45 minutes. We were able to do 8 to 10 more trays, however you presented that. So I'm assuming then that you've replicated those results, not just at where you worked when you first brought the one tray in, but where you're consulting at now. These are repeatable results at your engagements.
Right. So let me just go back to what you said about less trays. So we actually went from 7 trays to 3 trays. So from 7 to 3, we're saving money, we're saving time. And if you're green, you don't have to worry about the wrap. You don't have to worry about the garbage and things like that. So when I go into new facilities, it's not that I replicate. I have to observe first. I want to watch. I want to look. I want to see what's happening. Where are the challenges? So I assess first. I do a lot of observations my first week or two. See what the challenges are. Is it a process issue? Is it a person issue? What is it? Is it an inventory issue? I want to learn. I want to learn about the FCOTs. I want to learn about the OR challenges. So we ask a lot of questions. And then that's when I say, hey, here's what I can do. Here's what we have. Have you ever thought about this? Whether it's the one tray or something different. So to your point, yes. Do I replicate it? A lot of times I do. But every facility is different. One size doesn't really fit all. So it really depends on the facility.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that there'd be some variation, but overall, the efficiencies are fairly consistent.
Right.
All right, Kristina. Well, it sounds like you're really helping transform a whole lot of sterile processing departments out there. I realize the one tray has been a big benefit and, we're pretty much coming to the end of the interview, but I thought, I'd give you a few minutes to maybe offer up some final thoughts, or maybe there's something that we didn't talk about that would be really important to mention before we wrap up.
I guess in closing, if I could just say to everybody who's in sterile processing or the C-suite or in peri-op, if you stay stuck, you get the same results. So we're heading towards 2026. When you do the same thing over and over and over, you're going to have the same outcomes over and over and over. And it's really important to be innovative. And what can we do with less? Think about AI is here. All this technology, they have self-driving cars. What are we doing in sterile processing? What are we doing in patient care that's setting us different from everybody else? Right? So be a forward thinker. When you think the same and you're not willing to hear new data and new evidence and new and creative ways to do things, you're always going to have the same results. I always say this, there's more than one way to count to 10. Back in the day, you couldn't say anything to me, right? It was my way and that was it. How can I be more creative? How can I save money? How can I increase surgeon satisfaction? How can I make my staff feel safer, that they're making a difference? So again, if I could say something to everybody, just be a forward thinker. Don't stay stuck. Be innovative. Don't be caught in the group think and don't be caught in the echo chamber. That is the worst thing that you can ever do. Be the black sheep. Be the black sheep.
I absolutely love this as a segue to your website because I feel like you named your website after everything that you've been telling us on this conversation today. So can you tell everybody, how can they reach you, whether it's by phone, but definitely offer up the website as well?
Sure. So my website is efficient-transformation.com. It's Ketchum Consulting, 2 Ks, LLC. And there you can find my website, a little bit about me, what I do, the experiences. And it's a fun website. You'll have fun when you click the orange tabs, they turn backwards and you get to see everything. So if anybody needs any advice or just to chat or to talk or get an opinion or whatever, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help. That's what I do, right? Patient's advocate.
Excellent, Kristina. Excellent. And I do want to say we'll have your link in the description of the episode as well. So if anybody didn't quite write that down quickly enough, we'll have a reference right in the description. I also want to remind everybody to follow IST1 Tray on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can give them a call at 937-619-0138. And as always, follow the product IFU for use, right, Kristina?
Instructions for use, always.
That's the best thing to point a surveyor to. Give them the IFU and
give them the business.
You're usually much better off. Yeah, you're in the business.
Give them the business.
Fight back, says Kristina.
Fight back.
Kristina, you were wonderful today. I really did enjoy our conversation.
I appreciate it. This is great. Thanks again.
That was Kristina Parolo from Ketchum Consulting, and I just love her story. And she's very real about it. When she first talked to the One Tray team, as she said, she told them to kick rocks. Well, here she is 14 years later, having lots of success with the One Tray, and she's repeating it everywhere that she goes. And facilities are looking for ways to deal with not having enough extra instrumentation and trying to reduce those case delays and having happier patients and happier surgeons. So, Kristina, thanks so much for coming on. I definitely want to have you back on another episode. You're so entertaining. And as a reminder to everybody listening, follow IST1 Tray on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can also call them at 937-619-0138. And if you want to talk to Kristina directly or learn more about our consulting business, go to efficient-transformation.com. On behalf of all of us at Beyond Clean, thanks for listening to this Vendor Spotlight.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Beyond Clean. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to Beyond Clean on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for Beyond Clean in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@beyondclean.net. We look forward to hearing from you.